Hi everybody, my name is Katie Parker and I am covering the West Region's Pac North Conference for the WPSL's 2022 season. Today I have the privilege of talking with Chris Malenab. He brings over 20 years of coaching experience to his first season with the California Storm. He's coached in the USL for various teams, including the Sac Republic, Reno 1868, and the Oakland Roots. While his coaching experience is impressive, he is here today to talk about an even more important topic. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Chris is a suicide attempt survivor, and now he is a strong advocate for mental health awareness. Chris, at the time, did you notice that you were struggling mentally, or did it take the suicide attempt on January 6, 2019 to really make you realize how serious things were?
No, actually, I think it was a challenge. I couldn't say like I planned it per se, but even though that the red flags were there, however, I think things just came to a boil to where it happened, and it's even that in itself. Even though I'm obviously blessed and grateful to be here to have this conversation, to be on the soccer field, to be around my family. There's still a lot of stuff that around that time I still don't know exactly what happened, because it was it was just almost like robotic or autopilot, where I wasn't necessarily in control of it. So
Did you know anyone who had dealt with or talked about mental health challenges at the time?
no, to be honest, like I think that's the hard part, is from a culturally, and when I say culture, not necessarily just my, yeah, some of it contributes from my heritage, of being part of the Asian culture, but also being in sports, and a lot of it isn't necessarily like I was directly told like don't talk about it. It was just never talked about. So it wasn't so much that I've ever known anyone around me that has had those conversations, because it just wasn't a normal thing, right? Like even in sports, I think until recently, and again, I've been so honored to be with the organizations I've been with, and it's almost like self, what is it? How do I say this? It's almost like a self-proclaiming prophecy type of thing. Like, oh, I shouldn't talk about it, and by not talking about it, then I'll be normal type of thing. I'll fit in, and so I think that's where it's kind of always been, is that it hasn't been around me. So that's part of the reason I was like, oh, well, I must be the one that's not normal type of thing.
Yeah, I understand that. When were you officially diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder?
I was about 26-ish. So yeah, about 60, what is that, 16 years ago, 17 years ago. Um, and so during that time, I didn't know what it was. The resources weren't necessarily around me, or at least I wasn't willing to engage myself in the process to find the resources. And when I did receive the suggestions of, oh, therapy and go see a psychiatrist and so forth, I was like, this isn't, again, kind of using that word normal. It's not normal. I know people talk about they go to the doctor, but I've never heard any of my friends talk about going to the therapist. So even through that time, it was a challenge, and the challenge wasn't from the people around me. It was a challenge in my own self, because of the fact that it wasn't something that was quote unquote normal. And so for me, it was like, oh, well, what's wrong with me? I just want to be normal. So I just what normal people did, and I didn't really engage myself in the process of finding the professional help I needed.
How do you feel like you're doing now in this season of your life? How are you taking care of yourself?
Well, the biggest thing is obviously the professional help that I found, and finding I think finding the right person, or the right self care team, is a challenge. You know, for me, I think the most challenging part is having to like tell my story over and over and over. Not so much like the story of like what happened January 6th, 2019, but like where it all built up, like my background, my upbringing and all that. And so that part got exhausting. And so at some point I'm just like, oh, therapists are never going to get it. But then until I actually like said, no, these are professionals. who's going to help me and give me the resources and the tools, I need to be willing to understand that it is a process. It's not like going to, the doctor and them saying, oh, you're allergic to this, take this one, medicine for 2 weeks and then we'll see how it goes. It's longer than that. So it is exhausting because it is our mental wellness that we're trying to keep well, and so I think that part was tiring. But then once I found the right self-care team and then realized like these are the people around me that are not just going to help me, in this situation, but are going to be my biggest advocates should something else come up. Then I started realizing that, yeah, I need to put as much energy into this as I need to, because by doing so, this is actually the way that I show the people around me who love me that I love them back, is by taking care of myself first.
How do you keep yourself in the right headspace? What are some things that you do?
Well, I think that's the thing, is that unfortunately a lot of it comes with trial and error, right? It's not, oh, I go to my therapist says journal, run, do this, do that. Well, unfortunately there's no like cookie cutter activity or toolbox. So for me, what I found is running has been something that I've really allowed me to be in the present. There's a little motto that I've started using, and it started in running, and then it's kind of carried over into life, is be where your feet are. Because in running, if especially like running trails, if you're not where your feet are and you look too far down the road, you might kick a tree root or a rock, and you may be tumbling. So you got to be where your feet are. And the same goes in life, is like, yeah, we have these goals that we want to attain, and we want to be certain places. However, sometimes by looking too far ahead, we don't actually get to enjoy what we're doing right now. And so sometimes I think without knowing it, we're actually we're missing the whole idea of enjoying the small victories, right? And so being where my feet are, whether that's through running, whether that's even like journaling, like little gratitude lists, make me realize like, okay, not every day is going to be great, but there's always going to be a good in every day. And that's allowed me to do so, is finding those smaller things. And then other things too, is like running with a friend and having coffee. Like those things like have become much more like than just the act of doing it, but it's like where my headspace allows me to kind of just relax and breathe.
Transitioning a little bit into how you take this knowledge and awareness into your job as a coach in soccer, and this being your first season with the Storm. The WPSL, it's kind of a fast and furious season, and coupled with the opportunities that can come for players from playing in the league, it seems all of that sort of is the perfect recipe for a player to put a lot of pressure on themselves. How do you guide them through not only becoming the best version of themselves on the pitch, but also prioritizing their mental health as well?
Yeah, and for me, it's a fine balance, right? Like I've been in the pro game for 8-9 years now, and it's a fine balance, because just because I've gone through it doesn't make me an expert or professional in it. So in no way am I one to give anyone professional advice when it comes to mental health. However, one of the things that's been introduced to me, and I've really started to think about this, is that head coaches tell players how to play, assistant coaches help players how to feel. And that really got to me in understanding, like when I first heard that, I was trying to figure out what does that mean exactly? But then as I got through the process and interacted with a lot of the players, in the United Soccer League or even MLS players, it was actually about reminding them to enjoy the moment, enjoy the game, because like you said, the game is fast and furious, or at least the season is fast and furious. However, we still have to enjoy it. We can't get so caught up in all kinds of other things that we lose the reason that we put our cleats on every day, right? However, on the same note, reminding players that if they're struggling, if they're facing these challenges, anxiety, depression, or other things, soccer will always be there. And it's okay to say, I can't do that right now. Soccer will always be there because, you know, we can walk away for a day, 2 days, 1 month, but the game's always going to be there, right? Yeah, the season's only 2 months, 2.5 months long. However, there's always going to be a season ahead of us, but we're only here once. So I think I don't know if that answers the question, but it's kind of balancing that of reminder of enjoy being here, but also understand that if being here isn't where you need to be right now, find where you need to be.
That's really moving. What do you think is the most important thing for people who aren't having a hard time mentally to understand about people who might be? And obviously you don't always know what people are going through. So someone who isn't struggling themselves, what would you hope that they would know or keep in mind?
I think the easy answer is always be kind, be empathetic, because like you said, we never know what other people are dealing with, what challenges they're facing. However, I think for me the biggest thing that is to give people time. I mean, I think one of the things I've actually recognized or realized is that it's really important to know the human being before the player. And so when you ask someone, and it's not just like, how's everything going? It's getting specific. It's like, if you see someone's struggling, because you know them personally and their things aren't necessarily like the quote unquote normal for them, ask them specifics, like, how is your mental health? And that's an okay question to ask. But I think just being kind and caring, and not necessarily just shooting out answers to try to help, but just be supportive.
What's something important that you would want people who are struggling to know?
Know that they're not by themselves. They're not alone. That they're needed. They're loved. They're cared for. That someone needs them here today, tonight, tomorrow, next week. That they're important. And then, like, I think the biggest thing is that they're never alone. There's always someone here that loves you, supports you, cares for you.
After being more vocal about your story and being able to talk about it, has there been anything surprising that's happened or that you've learned?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've come to realize, and then I think, unfortunately, I think you turn on the TV, you watch the news. There's a lot of like sometimes you lose hope in humanity, right? With everything that goes on. However, I've come to realize there's so many caring, loving people in this world that that we need to realize, like, yeah, there's people that care. It's I think for me it's a social awakening of that can't paint everyone with the same brush, because there are some very special people in this world, as long as we're willing to build that relationship with them.
Now, I know you have a shirts that you design. Have you been doing this every year?
Yeah, I've been doing this for the last 4 years now. It's a Mental Health Matters t-shirt. I kind of changed the logo a little bit. I work with various artists, and proceeds go to various causes, foundations. This year, it's a Mental Health Matters shirt that has a brain dribbling a soccer ball. And 100% of the profits will always go to that foundation. And this year's foundation is the Jordan Porco Foundation. It focuses on peer-to-peer education, suicide prevention. It's named after Jordan Porco, who died of suicide while in college. And so that's who the profits are going to.
Do you know off the top of your head the link that people can find it?
Yeah, the link is kind of long. The easiest way is to just get on my social media, on Twitter or Instagram at Chris Malenab, and that's probably the easiest way to support the shirt.
So I am curious, because this is always something that I have fun telling people, but what is your first soccer memory?
My first soccer memory is me literally standing on a field with no soccer ball. It's and there's pictures like me like at 4 years old just standing out on a soccer field with no, but I actually don't remember the game. I just remember always just standing on a soccer field. Like you put the uniform on, but I don't ever remember chasing a ball. I don't remember ever like kicking a ball. My first soccer memory literally is me standing on a soccer field with a uniform on.
That's great. I heard a interview that you did where they asked you who your favorite soccer player is, and you said it was you as a little kid.
Yeah, I always like like people always ask me, "Oh, who's your favorite player?" Like growing up, I was like me. Like, come on, realistically, like I didn't know any player until I was a teenager, right?
True.
Especially my age, like watching games it wasn't as accessible as it is now, right? It was like maybe on a Saturday, maybe you get an EPL game, if that. So I didn't know anyone else. I knew myself.
I'm the greatest. So from your love of playing, how did you get into coaching, and how have you enjoyed that experience?
Yeah, so coaching kind of fell on me, to be honest, because so this is where I always have a soft spot for the players that aren't good enough or aren't big enough or aren't fast enough. Well, I wasn't tall enough, and so I got cut from my college team because I was a goalkeeper. Right? There's no one like looking for a 5'7" goalkeeper. I mean, if that was the case, then I'd be on the World Cup, right? But that clearly isn't the case. And so, being as stubborn as I am at the same time, I was like, I'm not done with soccer. And then so I tried this coaching thing out, and I was helping out with rec teams, and someone's like, "Oh, you're kind of good at this." I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. Like the kids that I work with like to play soccer." So then eventually I made my way into coaching club soccer, and then worked into coaching or being an assistant coach with a MPSL team. And then things kind of just fell in line where we would practice at a junior college, and then the junior college coach saw me and he was like, "Hey, would you be interested?" Then I jumped into the junior college circuit, and then got my coaching licenses. And then Sac Republic came about in 2013 with the inaugural season in 2014. And they were just looking for coaches to help out with their open combine. And I was like, sure, I'll help out. And, I just wanted to take pride in being part of the process, right, at some point. And then, sure enough, here comes the preseason, and Preki invites me to be on his staff, and in the USL for Sac Republic in 2014. And, yeah, I was this guy that was supposed to be doing camps and clinics and open tryouts. And, 8 years later, I'm in the pro game and or continue to be in the program, and it's just been fantastic.
I heard a piece of interview too where you said that you told your family that you were coaching, and they were like, "Yeah, but what are you doing for a job though?"
Yeah,
and that seeing you on TV was finally like that. Oh.
Yeah, but the problem is when they don't see me on TV anymore, they ask me what I'm doing now.
I'm still coaching.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, so what are you hoping to, or what are you excited about from the Storm's WPSL season, their 24th season in the league?
I've known Jamie for 20 years now, and she's coached a team in a club. I've coached a team in a club, but this is the first time we've actually like coached together. So that's exciting. And then I think the biggest exciting part from this whole thing is representing Sacramento, right, through this team that's created this amazing pathway for women in the game. And then also being in the short time that I've been around the Storm, I've already seen one player leave to play overseas. And it's one of those like, oh, I get to be along for the ride with someone else, right? And I think that's the most exciting thing. And just this last week, Jamie had organized a fantastic event for their kickoff party, and the amount of people that were there, that like Cece was there, Brandy Chastain, what else was there? Rebecca Lowe, right? I mean, all these people that were fantastic, that contributed to the overall growth right, globally, we're there in this one room, and that was all because of the storm that brought all this. So just to be able to, in that environment that I know is creating pathway for women is going to be fun.
I want to thank you for not only your strength and vulnerability to continue sharing your story, but also the awareness that doing so is probably going to help somebody else. Thank you very much for talking with us today and sharing everything with us.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me to have this conversation.
Is there anything else that you want to be able to say?
I mean, the biggest thing obviously is take care of yourself as an individual, and just be a good teammate, a good person in the locker room, so that everybody feels welcome. And because that's, I think, what we need more of, especially today, is to allow people to feel part of it, right? To feel that they belong in the group as well.